Book. Movie. Game.
Are you for real?
Absolutely.
Hi, this is Book Movie Game. This is Jen with Glasses.
This is Russ, and today we have a very special guest with us. We have Nate.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, this is the podcast where we review a book and a movie and a game. So it's my turn first.
Let's do that. Let's start
do
with
it.
books.
So I have a little bit of a theme. I've been kind of doing themes after I told my husband we weren't going to do themes. So, okay, that's what I do, I guess.
I stopped doing things just so she's going to start.
Because I said we don't need themes, but then I feel like things are coming together in my head with themes. The first thing I'm going to do is book. It's called Redshirts, a novel with 3 codas by John Scalazi. And it came out in 2012. So it's sort of a weird book to do because it's not new enough to be exciting, but it's not old enough to be exciting. But I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to review it anyway.
So it's a not exciting book.
No, it is exciting, but the time period, like, people are like, you should review things that, you know, no one knows about, or you should review things that just came out that people haven't read yet. I'm going to do something that you probably have read, maybe. John Scalazi is a science fiction writer. He's done a bunch of books, and this book was really fun, especially if you have any kind of passing acquaintance with Star Trek. And the reason why it kind of takes this positive, like, what if you took the rules of Star Trek and you kind of put them in somebody's real life, because a lot of people die on that show. And that's kind of the theme. It follows several new ensigns to the starship, and they basically kind of realize that if you have the red shirt and you go on the away mission, you usually die.
Yeah, it's doom.
So everyone on the ship, there's like a lot of fear and paranoia between the people that aren't the bridge crew about how you survive because so many people die. There's different crew members that hide when they see the bridge crew coming, and they don't tell the new people what's going on because that way they'll go on the away missions and die and not be them. So it can be kind of grim, but it's also kind of funny as these characters trying to figure out what is even going on. And it takes apart the idea of a story, and it talks about being caught up in the narrative and all these things in a way. Like if you actually took... I don't want to call Star Trek lazy writing because that's not fair, but sometimes it is lazy to kill a person off every episode and actually apply it to real life. Like, how would that feel? Like, if the only emotional drama you have is, like, always a life and death situation where people die or almost die, you know, how would your life actually be? And so I really enjoyed it. Sorry, my voice is going. I have a cold, but we'll just keep on powering through. So it was really just fun to read. And also interesting to read, to kind of think about that, like if the consequences of bad writing had real life consequences. And so the first part is it's a complete little novella. It's a little bit small, but it's really fun to read and entertaining and emotional. But then there's 3 little short stories after that. So the first little short story is basically from the perspective of one of the writers that kind of realized that literally every time he killed off a character in the book, he was killing somebody in real life.
Oh,
and
cool.
So it's sort of a little bit, it actually brings up
Stranger Than Fiction?
It brings up Stranger Than Fiction, because that's what occurred to me too. I'm like, this is like Stranger Than Fiction. And then it said in the short story, this is like Stranger Than Fiction. So I'm like,
That's Stranger Than Fiction.
John acknowledges that maybe this has been done a little bit before, but it's done a different way. And so it kind of wraps up some of the other characters in the story without giving too much away. Although we do say there's spoilers here, so spoilers. I don't think they're necessarily necessary for the novel. I did enjoy them, but there is a dramatic tone shift. So that threw me a little bit, like going from the novella to going into these 3 different, very distinct short stories that took some of the characters, but the tones were wildly different. And so that kind of threw me. But I really enjoyed it. It's really fun, especially if you if you enjoy literature, but also if you have any kind of passing acquaintance with science fiction, because it kind of takes it inside out and pulls, I guess, the things apart, like the different pieces, and how we kind of just skim over things when we read something or see something. It's like, that's logical, but if it's actually happening to you, it would not be. So I really enjoyed it, and it's Redshirts, a novel with 3 codas by John Scalazi.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and do my book then. My book is called My Lobotomy by Howard Dully. It is a memoir, and it is about a kid who got a lobotomy in 1960 and how that kind of affected his life and changed things forever.
So a happy, good time story then.
Oh, it's an absolute...
great for the Christmas season.
Yeah, it's definitely a fairy tale, and it's happily ever than after ending. But the reason I actually asked Nate on today is that Nate has a psych degree, and I thought this would be really kind of interesting just to kind of talk about sort of psych in the 1950s, kind of pre-Thorazine, and sort of, you know, some of the things that were happening there. We're going to be a little more historical than hysterical. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of all the lobotomy stuff because it's kind of gross, to be quite honest. And also because I kind of have an eye thing, and so...
I have a, child abuse brain thing, so that's my aversion to this book.
Well, it's a combination of an eye thing and a child abuse brain thing, so it kind of hits all of our buttons.
Oh, gosh.
But the guy who did his lobotomy, his name was Dr. Walter Freeman, and he's sort of the father of the modern lobotomy. He started way back in the day doing cranial lobotomies, which is, very old school, like actually drilling into someone's brain. But then he went somewhere and they showed him this transorbital lobotomy that was brand new. You basically just take, and originally he used actual ice picks, like from his freezer. You take an ice pick and go in through the eye, underneath the eye, and actually kind of just scramble someone's brain that way.
So you basically just take a swizzle stick and just scramble.
Now, eventually he did actually invent a tool just for this. But yeah, it was very crude in the beginning. It was crazy. So it got to the point then where he actually had what he called the lobotomobile. And he would travel to these different psych hospitals, and literally $20 a patient. They would send these patients out to his vehicle, and he would do the lobotomies right there out of the back of his vehicle.
Oh no!
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible.
See, this is why when people have like 50s and 60s nostalgia, just go back to a simpler time. It was not a simpler time.
Thanks,
they
I'll
had
pass.
lobotomy mobiles. Like, I just can't. Ugh.
It was crazy. So, obviously at the time this guy was considered at the forefront of the research, but now we look back and like this guy was kind of a monster, So it's really crazy. And then again, Nate, if you could just talk a little bit. So Nate, if you could just talk a little bit about sort of that pre-Thorazine era of psych, just kind of take us to that time and like why this would be considered a good option.
Well, there really wasn't anything that people could do, for people who they thought were crazy. What they realized, the first person that had like this lobotomy done worked on the railroad and had like a railroad spike go through like where his eye, the inside of his eye, and that produced the effect of lobotomization, and people just realized that like you could do that to help people, well, quote, help people.
Change someone.
Maybe the kind of help that you don't really want.
Right.
Like,
and they did consider that, healing them. It certainly eliminated a problem, but
it just made it easier to deal
but it
with.
It didn't help them.
One of the most famous lobotomies is in the Kennedy family, because John F. Kennedy, one of his sisters, was difficult for their dad to deal with. Like, she was very rebellious and she was emotional, and that family did not like emotional. They wanted happy, like there was some stuff going on there, and he just got her an unwilling lobotomy just to make it easier.
Yeah.
And then she was docile. Of course, then she was brain damaged. Like, there's some speculation that he didn't realize it was going to lower her intelligence or something. Like, apparently, he just decided to. Like, her personality was irritating to him, and he just decided she needed a lobotomy.
And I think that's the sad part of this story is that, his stepmother, very similar type of situation, just didn't want to deal with him. He was kind of a bigger kid, and I think she was a little bit afraid of him. I mean, today, he would really be diagnosed as ADHD. He was really hyperactive, and she just kind of wanted to get rid of him. Again, when you talk about this nostalgia for the 50s and 60s, that was still in an era where if you really wanted to, you could just get rid of a kid. And then he was in mental institutions for years and years, and it's just a really sad story, and it didn't actually calm him down. Like, it didn't actually change him that much.
Except lower his intelligence.
Exactly. So he just obviously had a rough go of it. He's doing really well now. He actually did a special with PBS that I watched on YouTube. It was really good about lobotomies, and you can, like I said, catch that on YouTube. But again, his name is Howard Dully, and it was just a really, really insightful book, and I super enjoyed it.
This is where I always get nervous when they're talking about doing new things to kids, either psych medications or any kind of modification where it makes me nervous because of stories like this, because they thought they knew, they're like, we're at the pinnacle of science in the 1950s and 60s, and of course they weren't. They were just in the beginning of understanding that they didn't know how much. They were at that dangerous point where you think you know everything, and you have to take one step further to realize you have no idea how much you don't even know, and this kind of stuff happens. So thank you for reading the book, so I don't have to read it. But
That's right.
Yeah, it's I can't.
Well, that's the thing too.
Openly weeping and then depressed for like 6 months about it, even though it's long gone. I don't even personally know him. It's just such a sad story.
Yeah, that's the thing. When Thorazine came out, they actually called it a chemical lobotomy because it had a lot of the same effects. But the big difference was it wasn't permanent, so you could stop taking it at any time if you wanted to. What he was doing was permanent, and just a lot of people didn't do well.
Well, people always want this kind of instant solution to everything. And not that mental illness, like, you don't want to work on it to deal with it, but it's just one of those things, like, you can't insta-fix this kind of stuff. Like, you can't be like, that person has a difficult personality, let's just fix it, or that person's aggressive, let's just fix it. 'Cause, like, in that situation, it doesn't work. Anyway, that's in my opinion. Anyway, yeah.
So even what we have now, you know, well, it's better than a lobotomy, but...
Yeah, this where you make mistakes, I think, with people and deal with things. Everyone kind of... There's so much stuff going on and so much information and misinformation, and there's so many schools of thought about all these different things that it's kind of interesting to see something like this from the past that we can evaluate clearly and be like, that was not a good alternative to something else. Like, that was not a good alternative to sending him to Boys Town. Like, they could have sent him to Boys Town or some other place where... Milton Hershey School or some other place where he could have gone and, like, learned how to run a farm and, like, dealt with whatever. Like, that was not a good alternative in this book, so.
Yeah, and again, we see, like what Nate was saying, we see, like, these commercials for antidepressants, you know, even the more modern ones. And it looks like, you know, they give you the impression that there's sentient robots going in just to fix the problem, and it doesn't do anything else to your system. But a lot of these psych meds, they're just not elegant, and they really, all of them have side effects, and some of them just really are not good for you.
But on the other side of it, like, this is, so I don't want to come off as, like, anti-medication, because if you need medication, take your medication. But I think the issue is just to realize there's no insta-fix for anything. You have to work on, you can't just do one or the other. Like, if you're suffering from anxiety and depression, I am not a doctor, this is not advice, but you need to do both. Like, you can go and get medication, but you also need to do counseling. You can't just, there's no insta-fix. We have no modern pill that's going to make you fix everything. It's not going to fix your hyperactivity, your depression, your anxiety instantly. There's no insta-fix for anything, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of pharmacy commercials that want you to believe that, and they're like, it's insta-fix. But everything's hard work. Nothing's insta-fix. You just have to figure out what works for you and make the best decision you can. If something's brand new, maybe wait to see how it turns.
Let someone else be the trial run.
Exactly.
All right, Nate, you got a book for us.
Well, I didn't come prepared with any notes. I didn't know. I didn't come prepared.
Totally knew.
I didn't come prepared at all. But I guess right now I'm working on my English degree, my master's degree. I've been working on it for a year and a half. We're not working on it for a year and a half. And, you know, I just lately I started over. And right now I'm really on a J.D. Salinger kick. You know, I'm going back to his work. Well,
thank you for coming out of hiding to be with us today.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was, you know, I spent the last month in a bunker, so it was nice to see the sun.
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
Feel the wind on your face. So, J.D. Salinger, like, number one, like, what's your favorite work of his right now?
I mean, he's most known for Catcher in the Rye, but I'm really a fan of his short stories, you know, like the collection 9 stories. Mm-hmm. I just read, I guess this is what I'll talk about, I guess. I just read Frannie, which is like a kind of a long short story that he wrote.
It's not long enough to be a novella. It's like
kind of in between. He
It's like a preteen story. It's not quite a short story.
Right.
It's not quite a teenage story. It's definitely not a novel.
No.
But it's right in that awkward stage of like, it's a little bit long just to be a straight up short story.
Yeah.
But it's not long enough to publish.
That's that length that he liked. He never really wrote anything long. Mm-hmm.
So what's it about, and what about it really appeals to you?
Well, it's about a girl who's visiting her date, the guy she's dating for like the big weekend of the Yale football game. And she comes, and you can see from like a letter that he wrote or that she wrote to him and other things that she's not quite right. It's like she's going through something in her life, and she arrives and she can't really deal with the phoniness kind of other people. Yeah. And you know, he doesn't use the word phony in that story, but that's an idea that he, you know, develops throughout all his work. He's
big on that adults are fakes.
Right.
That people fake everything.
And Frannie's really she says a couple times in the story that she's sick of all this, you know, which is, you know, something that Salinger saw as a huge part of culture. You know, and he had he was ascribed to like Vedanta philosophy, kind of Buddhism. And, you know, that's very much about overcoming ego. And so Frannie, she arrives, and she is definitely off. And she arrives like with this mysterious little book. Mm-hmm. And she kind of hides it from her boyfriend, Lane. Doesn't really want him to see it. But the book is about, it's like the way of a pilgrim. She's kind of really into this idea, one little idea from this book about praying without ceasing.
Is that is it a parody of Pilgrim's Progress, or is it actually Pilgrim's Progress that she's carrying?
It's not actually Pilgrim.
That sounds similar to Pilgrim's Progress. So he's probably...
It's called, in the story, it's called The Way of a Pilgrim.
Yeah, I bet he's kind of referencing it without... He's like, I'll riff a little bit on this.
But it's her, she's really into this idea of, like, praying without ceasing, like, just fasting.
Her,
and talks. She tries to explain
what a weird thing to bring up at a Yale football game.
Yeah, well, they don't ever actually get to the game. Spoiler.
Things go horribly wrong.
Something does go horribly wrong in the restaurant before the game, actually. But.
Sorry, Bob's, like, making noises in the background. That's our
Bob
cat.
the cat will be a constant guest on the show.
I guess
whenever he chooses to.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you. He was being so loud behind you. The restaurant. Things went horribly wrong at the restaurant.
They do. I won't give it away.
But things just go horribly wrong. So what...
They do. Like,
you would recommend this for anyone to read this who has already read Catcher in the Rye? Because most people had to read it for school. But you're saying for actual enjoyment, you think this is better, or this is just one of your favorites?
I don't like to say anything's better. That's all, like, personal preference. But I loved it.
So repeat it again. It's obviously by J.D. Salinger, but what is it? What's the name of
title?
The title.
Oh, well, if you buy it, it's Frannie and Zooey. But that's, it's broken into 2 stories.
Gotcha.
And Frannie's the first one.
So it would be in the...
And what happens in that is continued in the second.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. Cool. So it's kind of like there you go. They're attacked.
They are.
Together.
They fit
and
well together.
They kind of come in a volume of... You said volume 9 of stories.
Well, those 2 come together, just those 2.
So just Google it, and it'll tell you everything you need to know. If you Google this title, I'm sure it'll tell you all the variations.
If you look up Frannie and put JD in, it'll come up. I
promise. The book is Frannie and Zooey, yeah.
Use your search engine of your preference, and I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting to me. I think it's interesting. It reminds me a little bit of Plath and, like, the bell jar, and there's some of the same. When you're suffering from, like, I think severe, and I don't know if Frannie's suffering from severe depression, anxiety. I'm just going to take a guess that maybe she is. But, I think you have a frustration with people just pretending to be things they're not, because you just don't have time to deal with that crap. Like, it takes so much effort just to deal with people that you don't have the emotional energy just to deal with them being ridiculous. Right? So that sounds really interesting.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah.
Jen, do you have the emotional energy to share a movie today?
I have no more emotional energy. I mean, that's pretty deep. We went into the My Lobotomy book, so...
Whew.
I know.
Definitely a downer. Sorry, guys.
Send all your letters to Russ.
Send them to Nate.
Tell him how angry you are.
Sure,
I'm sure people are going to be angry for 3 things. One, people who believe in no medications are going to be angry. People who believe in medications are going to be angry. And you're going to hear from some people who enjoy their lobotomies. So just be prepared for that.
There you have it.
It changed their lives for the good, they will say. I'm sure, because that's just how it works. My theme's so flippant compared to Russ's theme. I'm almost like, oh gosh, like, I got the heavy hitters, and I'm like, let me just talk about... So I told you I had a theme, and the theme is kind of parodies of Star Trek, I guess would be the theme, or parodies of science fiction. My movie is Galaxy Quest, which came out in 1999. It came out right in, like, December, so I saw it in 2000 the first time. This is a really interesting movie to me, and a lot of people brought up that it's just it goes on a lot more levels than you realize when you watch it, because it is a comedy, and it stars Tim Allen, so we've seen some of those if you grew up in the 90s. They aren't really that deep. But it's really enjoyable. I think the writing's really awesome, and just kind of, again, that feeling of, like, when you're faking it to make it, and what that really looks like. It's Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, Tony Shalhoub, Sam Rockwell, Daryl Mitchell. I love Sigourney Weaver's character in this. It's basically like if there's a time period for the actors in real life in Star Trek when they couldn't get real jobs anymore because they were so closely aligned with Star Trek, but Star Trek wasn't making them any money at all. So in actual historical real life, this is what was going on with them, which is they would just travel the country and open Toys R Us's, or they would just do conferences, and this is the only income they had because no one would hire them for acting jobs anymore because they'd be like, that's Captain Kirk, and it would totally disrupt the flow of whatever television show or movie. So they really weren't getting good jobs. And this movie is sort of about kind of that time period. And the reason why I know they also put up Toys R Us is because Russ is a picture of himself.
That's right.
With
Bones and Sulu.
Bones and Sulu
at
themselves.
The 1979 opening of Toys R Us.
There you go. So that's what they were doing. So Galaxy Quest is kind of taking that time period for these characters that were in an 80s science fiction show, that basically they're at the point where the child actor has grown up. Everybody has sort of just stayed, like, none of them have been able to move on because they love these characters and they hate these characters they've had to play. And people want them to be as enthusiastic about the show as the day they first acted in it, but it's been like 15, 20 years and they haven't been able to do anything else. And so it's really interesting to kind of see the interplay of characters. My favorite is probably, there's so many favorites, but Sigourney Weaver's my favorite because everyone has done this. She's a great line in this movie and she's like, I have one job and it's stupid, but I'm going to do it. Because basically in the series, all they ever had her do was repeat the computer. So the computer would say, Captain, our shields are low. And then she would turn around and say, Captain, our shields are low. That was her whole job in the show. And basically with this movie, at a certain point, you sort of realize that there's these aliens that have been watching this and they think this is an actual thing. Like, they think this is real people. They think there really is. And so there's a point where they really just expect these people to save the day. And they're just a bunch of very neurotic actors. And it's super, super enjoyable. And especially if you kind of enjoy the kind of comedy where, you know, things get revealed about the characters. And that's what I love about it. I don't really like a comedy where people are just being horrible to each other or where the joke is just kind of mean. There's certain comedies that have like a mean tone where the tone is we're just going to set up this person to be goofy and then we're just going to beat the crud out of them. Or we're going to do this thing where it's just so gross, like you're getting the gross laugh where you've made it so gross people are laughing because they're about ready to vomit. I don't like that either. But I enjoy this because it's kind of the comedy comes out. Like, as soon as you start hearing these characters speak, you know who they are. And it's just hilarious to see them interact and kind of change and grow. And when I looked this up, the writer is David Howard, and he hasn't written any other movie scripts, and I really don't understand why. I can't figure it out. I don't know what happened to him after this, because he should have done more. I think there's so many bad comedies through the 2000s and into the teens that I'm like, he couldn't get another movie made, but they can get all this other stuff made. I don't understand.
Yeah, he wrote a great script and then retired and went into oblivion.
And the director is, it's another French name. Why is all these French names for things I recommend, and I cannot pronounce them? But if you want to look it up, it's Dean Parasol, I don't know.
Sorry,
but he's
Dean.
a French actor. He did like one Jim Carrey movie in the late 1990s, and I think he did like one movie in 2010, which was a blip on the radar. He didn't do anything either, and he should have. This is a really enjoyable movie, especially if you just enjoy that whole kind of being able to laugh at yourself, like if you enjoy science fiction, being able to laugh at yourself. It's a good movie, and you haven't seen it. I think it was overlooked at the time. So yeah,
well, I have a great memory of this movie because Jen and I saw it on our honeymoon.
I know.
Some people go to Niagara Falls. We went to see Galaxy Quest.
That was the whole thing.
That's right.
We're done. I did see it recently just to say, like, I saw it in 2000. I think it might be good.
No, it's a fun
I don't
movie.
really remember. No, I saw it. I've seen it again several times.
And I believe that's Justin Long's debut movie.
It's one of his first movies. I'm not willing to say it's one of his first movie.
I'm going to say it's his debut movie, even though I haven't looked it up.
What's hilarious to me is to see him in this movie and he's playing a young kid, and then to see him now and he looks like essentially the same.
Yeah, he does.
So he must not ever go out in the sun. Like, he must just live in like one of those oxygen tanks.
He looks like a little kid with facial hair. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess it's good for his career. I hope he never gets sick of playing like early 20-year-old guys, because that's all he's going to play until he's 75.
That's right. Well, thank you, Jen. My movie today is Frank from 2014, written by John Ronson, who brought us The Men Who Stare at Goats and the wonderful book, The Psychopath Test. When I watched this movie, I actually didn't realize that John Ronson had written it, but after I saw that, it made sense, because it's very John Ronson-y, and if you've read John Ronson, you know what I'm talking about. Frank is basically about a guy who wears a large papier-mâché head all the time, and that really interested me. That's all I needed to know to want to watch this movie.
Russ is like, I'm in!
Papier-mâché head, never takes it off. I'm there. And if I remember right, Nate, you actually saw this movie as well, right?
I did.
Yeah, you did. You enjoyed it as well, right?
I did enjoy it.
Oh, that's good. Because
I also saw this movie. I can weigh in, too.
Jen also saw this movie.
I have
Very
things
good.
to say.
Very good. So the cool thing is, it is loosely based on a true event that happened to John Ronson. So this is, the character of Frank is based off of Frankie Longbottom from England, who did a lot of TV stuff and had his own TV show. It was a very strange type of variety show where this guy had a papier-mâché head and he had a little band and stuff. Now, Frankie Longbottom took the head off, but John Ronson sort of took this idea of, well, what if he never took the head
John
off?
Ronson had personal experience with Frankie Longbottom, didn't
Yes,
he?
what happened is they were somewhere, I don't know, it was just out and about somewhere, and Frankie Longbottom, they were going to go on TV, and they had lost their keyboard player. Keyboard player quit. And so he literally turns to John Ronson, didn't know who he was, and said, "Can you play C, F, and G on the keyboard?" And John says, yes. And so John Ronson was actually in the band for one episode. So he kind of took this idea and just wrote a movie about this. And basically the same thing happens in the movie. And then the character John, who's an aspiring musician but is kind of really struggling, winds up joining this eccentric band, and they go all over the place, and he winds up like getting stuck recording this album with them in Ireland.
And I love this movie for various reasons. It's one of those movies where you kind of all like, I'm this guy, like the main character, what's his name again? I'm sorry.
Frank?
No. John's the main character. Frank's the sideshow is what I think. Russ probably think Frank's the main character.
Frank's on the cover.
Because I think we can all say, like, this guy John, like, he wants to be so badly, and we all know people like this, and to some extent we all are this person. He wants to be amazing so bad. Like, you just see him, like, trying to come up with song lyrics, like, walking along the beach. He goes back to his house, and he's trying to play this song. It's the worst song ever. And he just wants to be as good as Frank, and you can't really tell. It's this idea of, like, does mental illness make you a better artist or not? I mean, there's a lot of debate about that. And also, too, like, he wants that fame so bad. I don't know. It's just, I don't want to give too much away, but it's basically, it's so interesting to me to kind of do a portrait of this character where this guy is stuck in this situation where he's playing in a band. He's the worst player in the band. He doesn't even really get the musical, what's going on. Like, all the other players, like, understand that there's genius happening. And he kind of does too, but he doesn't understand, like, how to go with that flow. Like, Frank will say, play this, and then he has to play it. But the other guys all kind of just, like, join in and kind of go with this amazing, like, flowing song that lasts probably an hour. Like,
yeah, his job is to play C, F, and G.
Yeah, his job is Frank literally goes, play this, this, and this. And then, okay, and then Frank reminds me a lot of 70s singer. You like him, I like him, sort of. I like one song that he did. He has a deep voice.
From The Doors?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that guy. Who's that guy?
Who is it, Jen?
I don't know.
Jim Morrison, maybe?
Jim Morrison. He reminds me of Jim Morrison. So one time, Russ and I, we'll just tell a little story, but we had to paint, like, the doors in our house, and Russ is like, I have this Doors CD. And I'm like, okay, I'll listen to the Doors. Because
I like themes.
You know, if you've only heard the Doors on, like, old-time rock and roll stations, you don't really understand what they're about. You kind of hear one or two, like, oh, okay, it's like a guy with a deep voice. And then when you sort of hear him, this song feels like it lasts like 3 hours, where he's just going on and on about the lizard man, and like, and it doesn't even make sense, and doesn't even, there's no story, the Lizard King, it doesn't even rhyme, it's just on and on and on. I'm like, Russ, when is this song over? He's like, he's on his 4th song. And I was just like, what is going on? I'm like, it sounds like he's just laying on the floor drunk, like mumbling in the microphone, and Russ is like, I think
you're very close there.
I know. Russ is like, he's like, yes, isn't it amazing? And I'm like, no. I feel like Frank, the music, is a better version of that, and I think in a version that I can enjoy.
Yeah, I think you explained it well, which is John wants to be special, and Frank is special.
Right.
But Frank kind of doesn't want to be special, which is the cool thing about Frank.
Right.
He's conflicted, for sure.
Yes. I want to hear Nate's comments on this movie, because we've been talking over him.
I think it's interesting with John, he's like, Frank kind of teaches him how to let go so that he can be creative. He's kind of really
he's very tightly wound.
And Frank, you know, I think the hat, like, kind of allows him to just do whatever he wants without, like, anyone judging, like, him, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he kind of, like, puts this big head on. He's like a character, and so he doesn't feel inhibited at all, because it's, you know, he's like playing.
Yeah, he's like, they don't really see him.
It's not him.
Mm-hmm. There's so many good, I think, metaphors in this movie. Just things like parallels with, like, you understand, like, how performers have to be able to perform. You almost have to make this character. Like, in real life, I think, like, Lady Gaga's good at this, where she's kind of created this character that's not her, and so it allows her to be insane on stage. And I'm not even saying I'm a particular Lady Gaga fan, but allows her to sort of be crazy, but because she's wearing all this makeup and wigs and costumes, and then she can, like, go home and be like a normal person.
Right.
Although Frank never goes home to be a normal person, he always keeps the helmet on all the time.
That's right.
You know, it sort of allows you to absorb that criticism and not be crushed by it. I think that's the hardest thing about making anything, because it's always easier to make nothing than it is to make something. But then when you do make something, the criticism is, because it's so personal. It's like, I made this thing, I wrote this thing, I sang this thing, I performed this thing, and to be able to have that layer. Now, unfortunately, I feel like John, even though he learned how to let go a little bit, he also didn't learn how to do well, I think is the problem. Or I think he missed his gift. Like, through the movie, he starts to manage the band's social media, but I think he has a good sense. You'd almost be like, you gotta be a filmmaker, you gotta be a writer, you're not a musician. But it's like, he's like, I'm a musician. I'm like, I don't really think so. Like, if he had, through the movie, which he does not, if he had decided to make like an actual documentary of Frank, which he does little bits and pieces of that, I think he would have found his bliss better, because I think he would do better at that, capturing the moment and being outside of it rather than trying to be in it. And also, he's just not a good. And Maggie Gyllenhaal's is in the movie too, and she is amazing.
She is.
Yeah.
Her performance is amazing because for a while, you're not really sure how crazy she is. Like, you feel like maybe you sort of get to a point in the movie where you feel like Frank is more sane than she is, or maybe she's the one who makes Frank crazy.
Right.
All the band members have varying degrees of mental illness. They really do in their own way.
But I feel like with Mag, I mean, the other two band members are French, and you just feel like they're just French. Like, doesn't he sort of feel like they're like, they believe in artistry in a way that like it's more meaningful the less people know about it.
Only a way the French can do.
Well, I think there's sort of perception. I don't know if it's true or not, because but I think there's a sort of perception about French culture that they are kind of the original hipster culture, in that the more obscure and less understandable something is, the more amazing it is. I think there's a lot of comments. I mean, it made me think of J.D. Salinger, but this idea that in France, if you write one amazing novel, then you never have to write anything again because you've written this. But in America, we're like, where's the next one?
Right.
Like, we read it, and it's just been published, like, today, and we're like, where's the next one?
Right.
Like, we have this idea that we just want to keep consuming,
Right.
and
Which Salinger hated.
I'm sure that's what made me think of this whole.
Yeah.
It's all interconnected except
Yeah.
for my stuff, which is.
But if you like that kind of stuff, Frank is the perfect movie for you.
It is.
The
Yeah.
music is great. It's just a weird, cool story. It's one of those movies that when it's over, you're sort of like, what was this about? You know?
Yeah, you have all
It
these
makes you really think about things. And
This movie makes you like, you basically finish the movie and then you have all these feelings that you don't know what to do with.
Yeah.
You're like, I have all these feelings. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And it definitely is a solid rated R movie.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really is a solid
Loads
rating.
of adult themes.
Some of them bother me less than others. I think it just kind of depends. I think, yeah.
Well, when you start with My Lobotomy, nothing can go worse than that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
Frank is an upswing emotionally.
Great ending, too, for that
Yeah,
movie.
Yeah.
we don't want to spoil the ending,
no,
but yeah,
we
it's
don't.
a fantastic ending.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is. And I don't want to spoil even who Frank
No.
is, just because I think that's a neat little surprise.
Yeah.
But Domhnall Gleeson plays John, and like Jen said, Maggie
From Harry
Gyllenhaal's
Potter
amazing
fame,
in it.
so,
Yeah.
if you're a big
Yeah.
Harry Potter fan, you already
He's
know
one of
that
the
guy.
Weasleys.
One of the Weasleys. But no, I think the ending, it's hard to pull off a movie like that and have the ending go well.
Yeah.
And be satisfied.
And being
yeah.
satisfied. There's
Yeah.
lots of movies I've watched that I really enjoy the first part and the middle part, and the ending just doesn't feel right. This ending felt exactly right. Like, I felt like everybody got the character arc that they needed to have, and I really enjoyed that a lot. So I guess I'm also recommending it, but I'm keeping my own recommendation for it.
It's still on Netflix, isn't it?
It's on Netflix. Yep, you can catch it on Netflix.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can do that.
It's a great watch.
Or your local library.
That's right. That's right.
Since Netflix doesn't pay us or anything. If they started paying us, we wouldn't mention your local library, but since they haven't, go to your local library and get it for
Netflix
free.
is welcome to pay us to advertise.
They won't, but they could.
All right, Nate, do you have a movie for us today?
No?
I would just like to
I mean,
say, to be fair to Nate, he knew he was going to be on the show for a while.
I think, yeah, but I also think that you said a book, a movie, or a game. I didn't realize that I was going to have to come with all three.
Dang, that spell corrupt.
I know. Yeah, sure.
Blame it on the text.
Sure,
So
that's
it
exactly.
auto-corrected it to or.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
So-
guess what, Nate? It's and.
Well,
What have
let's
you
see.
Yeah, what have you been watching?
Like I said, I've been on this Salinger kick. Last night I watched the Salinger documentary that's on
I also saw that. You want to talk
by
about that?
David Shields and Shane Salerno.
Fact
Yeah,
you-
sure. Let's talk about
The
that.
fact you can remember without notes is really awesome, so fun.
Yeah, we can't do that.
I know, I have to write everything down. I literally go on Wikipedia a couple minutes before the show, and I'm like, I want to recommend this, but who directed that? Who was in that? I mean, I do kind of remember, but names are escaping me. Well, but anyway, go ahead.
I mean, I really enjoyed it. It was a really good documentary.
So what did it cover? Did it cover his early life? Did it cover everything? Did it just cover his working life? Like, he's very odd.
It brushed over his childhood, kind of talking about how he was kind of part of like the wealthy class when he was young and went to all these prep schools, and that I think he lived on Park Avenue, but he ended up really rejecting all of that, So it kind of brushed over that part, and then it really kind of started with him, being really into writing, going to, it talked a lot about him going to war.
So he wasn't hit hard by the Depression at all, really. Then his family
No, this was after. No, yeah.
He wasn't hit hard by anything. Like, his
No.
family wasn't. He didn't have a fun it wasn't like he had a situation where it's like, we're rich and then we're poor.
Right.
He was just rich all the way through.
Right.
And then he was in World War II, right?
He was in World War II. He was in Normandy. He was there on VE Day. So he actually had 6 chapters of Catcher in the Rye with him while he stormed the beaches of Normandy.
Oh, wow.
And, he said he needed that there to help him.
To get to he had something going on to the end.
Yeah.
How weird, like, if he had been shot and died, like, how weird would it have been someone to find out? Would that ever been published? Like, would have someone found it on his body and been like, this is amazing? Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So many people died that day.
No one would ever know about it.
He could have been, he could have been one of them. Like, when you see the footage, it's awful. Too.
When they were going inland,
Oh, yeah, all kinds of crazy.
Whole troops were getting.
Yeah. So he's a weird dude. I mean, as far as, like, his personal life, like, there's always been this kind of iconic idea of the hermit writer.
Right.
The writer who doesn't talk to anybody, who doesn't care about money, he's going to live in a cabin in the woods. But he is that guy. And it's like how, he fed into it and he even made that even more of his persona, I feel like. Yeah. Like, who did they interview in this documentary? Like, who would even know him well? Because I feel like, does anyone know him well? Or knew him well? Well,
I mean, they had a lot of... They had, like, former lovers of his. They had...
The ladies knew him.
Yeah. They had writers that he knew back then. A lot of, like, editors and people who were around during his time.
So what were the insights that you were surprised by that you were like, oh, okay?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he wanted his work to be great, but he didn't want fame. He wanted to be... He wanted that glory. Well, I don't say he wanted that glory. He wanted his works to be incredible, but he didn't want what came with it personally.
He wanted to make a literary impact, but not necessarily a financial one, basically.
Right. Yeah, he didn't care about... It didn't really seem like he cared at all about money. I mean, maybe it afforded him time to write, and like because that's all he wanted to do. But it doesn't seem like he cared about money.
Well, I think there's those 2 ways you can deal with. I think growing up, there's more than 2 ways, but there's 2 things. Like people who grow up with a large amount of money, I feel like there's 2 responses. One is that they sort of become very callous, and they just kind of like their money, like money is important to them in the way that it supports their lifestyle. They live kind of this unsustainable lifestyle, and they either find a way to make more money through their money, or they kind of spend it all and then end up completely destitute. Or there's a kind of the other side of it too, where it's like because they grew up with money, they don't have that sort of fire in their belly, like I always have to have enough money in the bank. Like you'll see someone come up who had nothing and they're like, I'm never going to be that close to the edge of poverty again or starving or whatever. But because they didn't have that, so they're like, well, I'll be okay. Like I need very simple things. And some of that comes from, I think, the security of like you've never been starving to death, or you've never been in that situation where you don't have that traumatic childhood of like we got kicked out of our house and we're on the street, we don't know where we're going to go. You don't worry about that kind of thing because you kind of feel like it's always going to be there. And especially in his case, because his works were so popular, he didn't really have to worry about that. Like, they'll pay for the lights, they'll pay for whatever I need, but I don't really need that much, and you're not worried about it. Which is sort of a different perspective, I think, from a lot of people, like from not having any, because they're like, no, I want that. I need that security because I didn't have that growing up. So more like maybe, instead of being like Elvis, it's like Elvis's dog, like, I guess. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like Elvis grew up dirt poor, so he did all this crazy stuff with his money, and then his daughter was like, whatever.
Right.
I don't know. So anything else insightful? Because he passed away, how many years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. So I know he had like a bunch of unpublished stuff.
Yeah, he stopped publishing in 1965, but continued to write all the way until he passed away.
So is anything that he wrote publishable, do you think? Like, are they going to publish some of it? Have they already published some of it?
The end of the documentary said that there was Vault, and it listed different things that he had been working on. But it said they were going to release these new things in irregular intervals, beginning between 2015 and 2020.
So who are his heirs? Does he have any kids?
He does have 2 kids.
Do they have a good relationship or not?
When he wasn't in the bunker.
His daughter, Margaret, said that they really have no relation. That there was like an interview with Katie Couric she did, and she said, "Oh, we just don't have." And she wrote a memoir about growing up as his daughter.
Well, that's something I want to read.
And then I don't know. I don't think they interviewed his son at all. They did mention that that his son Matthew didn't see their childhood the way Margaret did.
I think it's such a weird thing with family.
So I don't know who's in charge of the estate or who's in charge of these decisions, or
because it's sort of a weird. So the publisher wants to make a decision because they want to make the most amount of money off of it to some extent. So you know what I mean? Like that is a publisher's job, whether or not So they're like, well, how can we do this to make the most amount of money? And then you have to worry about the other people involved because I know, this is not. So let's say like Kurt Cobain's estate with like all their music and stuff. There's a lot of argument about like all of their unpublished music because the other members of the band just wanted to publish it in like one big anthology, sort of like the Beatles. They wanted it all together. They wanted it all at once, like at this certain point, and then they would, I don't even know, Courtney Love and Kurt Cobain, I'm looking at Russ.
Yeah.
They're married, right?
They were, yeah.
So she wanted to dribble it out because she felt income-wise it would be better to release like smaller little snippets of things, like a couple of songs, or do like a shorter set. And there's a lot of argument about that. So it's interesting to me because I'm like, when you have a vault and it's J.D. Salinger, like, what do? Like, just publish the whole vault and just like fill it up? Do you, how do you even decide what's good? Can you even tell what's good at that point?
Well,
because
one of the things that they suspect is in there is actually the sequel to Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, they said there's a lot about the Caulfields, the whole family.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's obviously going to be a standalone and be very interesting to people, know.
I think they could not tell anyone they're publishing any of his work, and then they could just announce it on Twitter the day before, and it would be a bestseller.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Like
Even
and you don't have to release it all. And I think if they broke it into pieces, every piece would be a bestseller.
I just wonder, because I feel like there's certain points, like, you can definitely take with authors, like, arcs sometimes of, like, this is when they peaked, and this is when their work started getting, like, you can kind of do that with almost every author, like, after they passed away.
Right.
And so it'd be interesting to see, like, did he peak? Was he always continuing
This
better
is a
and better?
unique situation, though, because he stopped publishing so early.
Because there's this idea, and I think it's a right idea. Like, there's this idea is, like, you think by isolating yourself, you're going to get better. You feel like if all I do is spend time on writing, and I don't really talk to him, then I'm going to get better. Which I feel like in that situation, you become more and more isolated, and you lose the ability to tell if what you're writing is good or not. Because you don't have people interrupting you. You're not getting new ideas. You don't have things. There is this kind of, irritating to success, like the oyster and the pearl. Like, you're getting irritated.
Or pearl in the oyster.
Whatever it is.
As a pearl in the oyster, you have irritated me to success.
Yes. So something like that. So that's interesting to see, like, did he lose the ability? Because so many people...
I don't think he was, like, too reclusive. Like, he loved movies. They said that he had, like, stacks of New Yorker magazines. So I think he was really in touch with what was going on. That's how they made it seem.
But no one else is in touch with him.
Right.
So.
Like, he was in touch. He wanted to observe, but not to really.
He knew about people, but he didn't really know that many people.
Right.
I think I put my finger on his problem with as a dad. I wanted to observe, but not really be involved.
There you go.
That's interesting. So you enjoyed it a lot.
I did.
How long was the documentary? Was it fairly long?
A little over 2 hours.
So it's a great rainy day documentary. I'm interested in seeing that. I think
watch it from your bunker.
It's really interesting. Yeah.
All right, Jen, do you have a game for us today?
I do. Continue on with the bizarre theme of science fiction today. Basically, everything I've kind of recommended are kind of parodies in a way, or also taking a familiar theme and kind of turning it inside out. So, as you guys know, I broadcast on Twitch, and I do a lot of point and clicks, which point and clicks, if you're not familiar, are basically sort of like RPG puzzle games where there's a story element, but there's also a problem-solving puzzle element where you kind of have to figure out, you collect items, you talk to people, and you have to figure out, how do I get out of this situation? So I did not play Space Quest as a kid. It's made by the same people that, as you would think, King's Quest and Police Quest and all these other Quest games are made by, which is Sierra Online. It's written by different people, though. It's not written by the same people as King's Quest, and you can definitely tell because the humor's edgier, and it's also a little more kind of I don't want to use the term gory because it's VGA, so how gory could it be? And it's like it's a lot more kind of tongue in cheek. And this is back. Space Quest is basically about what happens if you're a janitor on the ship and it's being taken over. Like, how do you handle this? You got this guy. He's not that smart. Basically, he's been hiding out so he doesn't have to do his janitor job, like just kind of hiding from his bosses. And when he comes out, he hears this alarm goes off, and he comes out, and basically a bunch of crew members are dead, and there's a alarm going off in the ship that it's going to self-destruct, and you need to get to the escape pods. So what I really enjoyed about this is it's so weird because you're directing the character. So you would think that he would have very, very little personality, but there's a lot of personality. And even though this game came out in 1991, I think a lot of modern games can kind of benefit from this idea. Like, you have to if you're going to make a game that's sort of addictive and interesting and mean something, you have to really put a lot of effort into character development and what the story is and what makes sense. And so much of it, like, once you understand Roger Wilco, the protagonist, it opens this window to some extent, the puzzles and what's going on. because how would he solve this? Like, it's not just you solving, because how I would solve it would be, I would just go directly to this escape pods. That's what I would just do. But he has to do other things because of who he is. And I think that's what makes this game so interesting and really fun to play, is you kind of have to figure out, like, what is his deal? And you figure out he's not that bright. So there's lots of things that you feel like he should do that he just can't do. So you're clicking on it, you're like, just do this, but he can't do it because he's not that bright. But he's also kind of a little bit slimy, but also kind of charming in his own way. So it's really interesting and a fun thing to play. And when you play older games, sometimes they kind of suffer from the time period that they were done in. But I don't really think this is. I think the illustrations are beautiful. Now, I want to be clear. This is the VGA version. Like, they redid this version. So Sierra was one of the first ones that did these RPG point-and-click games. They did them in the early 80s. And the graphics then were extremely limited. Like, literally just little pixels. So in the early 1990s, they said to relaunch some of the earlier titles in, like, the new VGA, the really exciting VGA, and this was one of them. And it's super fun to play. It can be very frustrating to play. Make sure you have the manual, because they used to do this copyright thing. Because imagine this, guys. I mean, it's sort of funny to feel like, because you can do this with torrent and stuff, but basically, because this game came on, like, one floppy, you could copy that floppy and just hand it out to all your friends. So what they would do is
which happened regularly.
Which I'm sure happened regularly. But so what they would do is they would make you puzzles you could only solve if you have the manual. And I kind of forgot that when I played this game, because I wasn't really thinking of it. I had the manual, but I didn't look at it. Because now, when we get a phone, we get a game, there's no manual. You just kind of jump in and maybe there's a tutorial. So I kept, in the very beginning of the game, not the first puzzle, but like the second or third puzzle, I kept failing and I couldn't figure out like what the key was, and it's because I had not read the manual.
So then you had to copy the floppy and the manual. And by the time you put all those dimes in the Xerox machine at the drugstore, you might as well just buy the game.
Yeah. So this is a really fun game, and there's sort of now, it's almost a trope by this point, like the janitor getting stuck on the spaceship. But for then, it was really new, and it's just the humor is really fun, and the puzzles are really fun, and it makes you think. And especially if you enjoy any kind of RPG games now, it's good to look back and kind of see where they started and like where they're headed. And so I really enjoyed it, especially if you're a fan of Star Trek, you'll enjoy it. Not that there's any specific Star Trek references, but they really kind of take on a lot of the classics in the field, like Isaac Asimov and some of those guys that wrote some of the first science fiction, and some of the things that they did right and some of the things they did wrong. So it's thoroughly enjoyable, and that's what I would recommend to play. And you can find it. It's a little bit of an abandonware game, which basically means that no one is currently publishing it, and no one really cares what happens to it. So I'm sure if you look for it, you can find it. Or you can even probably find it on eBay and figure a way to play on your computer. But it's a fun game.
All right. Thank you, Jen. My game today is going to be a board game called Alcatraz the Scapegoat. And I picked this game specifically because it's something that Jen, Nate, and I have all played together, so we can talk about it. It's made by Z-Man Games, and this is a cooperative game. They make some other cooperative games, the most popular being Pandemic by Matt Leacock, which is also a great game. But Alcatraz the Scapegoat is actually by Polish game designer, and I'm going to apologize in advance because we're going to murder your name here. Rafał Szyłecki is his name. Sorry, Rafał, I have murdered your name completely, I'm sure. But basically, it's a game of divided loyalties. So usually in a cooperative game, you either have a scenario like Pandemic, where everybody's sort of on the same team and everybody's, a good guy trying to bail yourself out of a bad problem. Or it's like Shadows over Camelot, also a cooperative game, where one person is the traitor. That's typically how those co-op games are divided. This one was really different because, again, it's a game of divided loyalties. So there's a player who is always the scapegoat, and then the other players are trying to do different things. So the scapegoat kind of gives you more power than the other players, but there's certain things and tasks that you can't accomplish when you're the scapegoat.
So just like in a real situation where someone's mad at you, you can shift around the scapegoat. Because the other players vote on who the scapegoat is.
Yeah, so the scapegoat changes from round to round, which I think makes it really an interesting thing. And so basically the whole idea is you're all these prisoners in Alcatraz, and you're trying to escape and figure out who you can leave behind and still escape with the fewest number of people, basically.
So each part of the plan has specific things you need to get. So maybe you need to go to the laundry room and you need to get some uniforms. Maybe you need to go get a shiv from somebody. Maybe you need to go get some blackmail information to blackmail somebody to get out. Maybe you need to... So you're going to have to go and complete these tasks. And the ideal situation, which has never happened, is that you get all the elements of the plan and nobody else does, and you can just escape.
And leave everybody else behind.
Right. But kind of what happens is you need other people to complete the plan. plan. So when you look at your little board, they're all laid out A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You're trying to match up with somebody else the completed plan. Now, if you're not the scapegoat, if you have any piece of the plan and it's time to escape, you can escape. Like, as far as if let's say Nate and I have the whole plan together and we don't need Russ, but Russ has any part of the plan and he's not the scapegoat, he can go. But if Russ is the scapegoat and he doesn't have an essential part of the plan that we absolutely need, because neither of us have it, then he's staying behind. So yeah, we don't like you anymore. The interplay of, like, the loyalties, I think, is really funny. I mean, the first time we played this, Russ ticked me off, and so then I just tried to sabotage the plan the whole time. I was so mad. I want to just leave the both of them behind and just go off on my own.
It's really cool. And each round add police officers to different cell areas, and so that makes different effects on the game. And I think it's a really well-balanced game, and it's just really fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Circle gets a square. There you go. My favorite time actually was when Nate and I were doing different things with Jen, and him and I were the scapegoat back and forth, and then we made Jen the scapegoat right at the end and left her. That was my favorite
left me
game.
behind.
It was.
I was so mad. I don't normally get mad when we play board games like that. I was so angry.
Because she had done all this work throughout the whole game, and then Nate and I looked at each other like, yep. Let's leave her. Thanks for the help. See ya, sucker.
Jen is a liability.
You didn't have anything essential.
Yep, that's
the tough part of the game.
Essential.
Maneuvering yourself to have one part of the plan completed that no one else has, so that you're always essential.
Yep.
But that's hard because it changes.
It's really hard.
Because new things come up, and then you're like, I have part E, and no one else has it, and then part E comes up, and someone else gets it, and you're like, I'm not essential anymore. I'm at risk.
Right.
There's a lot of, like, emotions that go on in this game.
Yeah, when the new opportunity comes up, it's kind of luck-based, because if you're thinking you have this essential part and there's no missions on the board that anyone else could ever get that part, and then a new part of the plan comes up and now someone else can get it.
Now you're non-essential.
Yeah, it's
i.e. scapegoat.
Right.
I would say play this game with a group of friends, but understand if you have a friend who's a very sore loser and gets very angry, or maybe even a spouse, make sure you don't screw them over.
If you are in marriage counseling with your spouse, this is not the way to work out your disagreements.
If you have that volatile couple that you invite over to play games that sometimes it dissolves into tears, don't bring out this game. Because there will be a literal shivving in your house as they get mad over the game. But it is a really fun game to play, and especially if you played a lot of board games with your group of, people you usually invite over. It's fun because it does kind of have the element of you're playing together but competitiveness, and if you played with people long enough and you know them well enough with other games, it gives you kind of an insight on what they're going to do, and it makes the game be on so many levels, because you're not just playing against the game, which you are, because it's possible that none of you escape. Like, there's one outcome where nobody escapes.
Because the board fills up with guards every round, so you're cooperating to get out.
Before the guards, there's too many guards and you can't.
But you're also always competing. So you're cooperating and competing at the same time. Yeah.
So you're playing against the game, but you're also playing with and against each other. Like, I know, like, Russ and Nate and, like, what they're going to do. And I'm like, I'm going to... So it's really, really fun if everybody agrees that whatever grievances stay on the board. If you are the type of person that will throw a fit and then be pouty the rest of the night, if you got made the scapegoat at the end of the game, then you probably shouldn't play. Like, I can take it. I was mad. I teased them about it the rest of the evening, but it was a fun game to play.
Yeah, and I like a couple elements of this game. One thing I like, they're double-sided tiles, and so each time the game is different. And also, because of the fact that you're adding guards every round, there's a definite time limit to this game. It's not going to go on for hours because the board will fill up. So it's for 3 or more players. It takes about 60 minutes to play rough. And again, that's Alcatraz, a Scapegoat by Z-Mandy's.
So great recommendation. Nate, were you prepared with a game?
I was not prepared with a game.
So, wait. I just want to back it up because our listeners will remember. You said you were confused. You thought it was book, movie, and game.
No, book, movie, or game.
Or game. But you did not bring a book, movie, or game.
Each time you said you weren't prepared. Now, which one did you actually pick? Maybe, I was hoping it was going to be game. You'd be like, yes, this is the one I'm prepared for.
I just can't, I'm just here to...
He's just
go.
here to be.
I figured I would just...
There you go.
This is just fine. Nate saying, I'm here to be.
Right.
You just exist.
Well, have you ever played any games before? Ever?
I played one.
Oh, good. Well, tell us about
Alcatraz.
that one. Alcatraz the Scapegoat. Oh, that sounds fantastic.
No, I love games. I play games on my phone, video games, board games. Oh, what do you want to talk?
Talk about a video game.
Talk about a video game.
Talk about a video game that you like.
A video game that I like.
or one that you couldn't stop playing? Same question.
Well, I think the most hooked I've ever been in a game was Skyrim.
Ooh, you're not alone. Many people have gone down that rabbit hole.
I think I logged like about 1,000 hours
Woo,
on that game.
That's a lot of days.
Yeah, really. It took over my life for like a long period of time. Do you want me to talk about it?
Yes,
absolutely.
that's what we want
So
you to
what
do.
is Skyrim?
Skyrim is like an RPG game. It's like it would be like a kind of...
Is this the one that's in the
genre.
Elder Scrolls?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
It's
So this is
Elder
like-
Scrolls 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the one I'm thinking about.
Basically, you start the game, you create this character. You kind of, you know, there's kind of like the rogue, the warrior, and like the classes. You're kind of along the lines of like the, you know, all other role playing. And so you make your character. You don't have to pick at the beginning. You kind of have freedom to just add abilities from any type of ability throughout the game. You make your character, and then the game starts, and you start having been captured by the Imperial. So there's kind of like a civil war going on between the Imperials and they're basically the rebels. You're captured by the Imperials, and you're about to be beheaded as the game starts. Basically, just for being on the other side. So then, right before you're beheaded, your head is like on the chopping block, and you're looking to the side, and you hear like this roar, and like a dragon like flies in, starts blowing fire like all over the place. So you basically you don't get beheaded. You're saved at the last second by this fateful
dragon. So basically, a dragon comes in,
and then you go and someone removes your handcuffs, and then you can you start gathering weapons.
So you can basically choose,
like
kind of develop this character, like what you want them to be, like
right.
whether you want them to be, like what you're amassing, who you're aligning with, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you could align with either side. You could refuse to play that part of the. Well, you can't refuse for too long, but you can stay out of that for a while if you want, like not pick a side of
one or the other and just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
So basically, just creating. That's interesting. I think I like games like that. I think what was the Star Wars game that was
Knights of the Old Republic
was like that. Knights of the Old Republic, where you kind of got to pick what you were going to do and how you're going to handle it, and it changed the game around you.
Yeah.
Now, this is a game. Do you play with people like online? Are you actually playing against people, or are you just kind of you're just playing in the game?
No, this was single player.
Gotcha.
literally in your
They
own
do
words.
have an Elder Scrolls Online. That's like a massive.
And what platform is this for?
I played it on PlayStation 3,
Okay.
but they have it for C and for Xbox.
Probably
Not Xbox One, Xbox.
Oh,
There
okay.
you go. Gotcha. Oh, that sounds really good. I like games that have that RPG element to them. I think it's interesting.
It's fun when you can kind of get to choose sort of the morality of your character and how they turn out. It's kind of neat.
Russ always plays them
I
as
always
bad as they can be.
I always go as evil as I can.
And I stick with lawful good because that's all I can
Yeah.
tolerate.
Skyrim doesn't have those classes, but it really does help to steal, pickpocket people, and
Just like real life, it
Yeah.
helps to steal things. Just take things off of them.
All right, well, we have had a great time today on Book Movie Game.
So this is Jen with Glasses. You can find me on Twitch. I stream on Monday and Thursday nights if you want to come check it out. Right now I'm streaming, well, I'm not going to bother to say because it changed up. I always stream older games, usually point and clicks, sometimes just straight puzzle games. Come and join me. It's fun. I interact with chat a lot.
And you do that on Mondays and Thursday nights,
Yeah.
is that correct?
I did just say that. Monday and Thursday nights.
Oh, I didn't hear. I wasn't listening, sorry.
Russ is as typical as just waiting for me to stop talking so he can talk.
And we want to give a big thank you to Nate today for being on with us. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, great. Good to hear, because if it was a horrible time, it doesn't matter. But this is Russ saying keep reading, keep watching, and keep playing.
Oh my gosh. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
All right, bye.